What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Cubs Live podcast. I am your host, Kyle Malzhan, alongside co-host Mark Talarico. And before we get things going, I want to welcome back a returning guest to the podcast, huge Brewer fan, Mitch Luedtke. And besides how the series went for you, I mean, the sun's out, the snow is gone in Wisconsin, the weather is warmer. How's it going, bro? How's it going, my man?
It's going good, Kyle. Yeah, thanks for having me back on. It was fun last time, so I figured, win or lose, I was going to come back on today. Obviously, it was disappointing losing 4 games the way we did, but glad to be back on the pod.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming on. A lot of people want to do this after just getting swept, but now I won't be too hard on you today, but we do have some baseball to talk about. So the Cubs heading into this 4-game series, we're trailing the Brewers 3 games in the standings and are standing at 1 game on top of Milwaukee heading out. And life can come at you real fast in April, playing a lot of NL Central teams. And, it's just the small sample size that goes along with it. But this stuff will even it out. The Brewers, I'm sure, will go up 1 or 2. The Cubs will go up 1 or 2. This will fluctuate. So the Cubs sweep Milwaukee, but there was no shootouts in this series. It was really a combination of really good starting pitchings on both sides, capitalizing on mistakes and some wacky weather to go along with it. And the Cubs ended up sweeping this series with Kris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo having to combine 2 hits. So it was other people that stepped up in timely manners. But like I said before, this series, it's going to come down to who blinks first or who's going to make mistakes, and we saw that. The Brewers booting some fly balls due to the weather, and we were talking, before this podcast, Mitch, about it. Yeah, that all happened, and Sogar missing a ball. I mean, when you're playing baseball at Wrigley in April, those mistakes will come and haunt you. Now, Mitch, it's not how you pictured it. I mean, you're going out with, getting swept, but what was your takeaway from this series? And maybe an offensive side, defensive side? I know your bullpen's been really hot, but talk to me.
Yeah, so, coming into this series, we were riding high, coming off of 8-game win streak. I know there was some talk about the teams we were playing, but I kind of try to build it off of you have to win. You have to beat the teams you're supposed to beat, whether it's the Marlins or whoever it may be. If you're playing a team that's, at the bottom of their division, you have to go out and take care of business. So Brewers were kind of coming in at, on an 8-game win streak, riding high. Offense looked to be in rhythm. I know they struggled early in the year, but they started to figure some things out. So, coming into this series, I had some pretty high expectations. I was hoping maybe we could go into Wrigley and win 3 games. Obviously, that didn't happen. Disappointed with the way the offense kind of took their approach. They were really aggressive, and you have to credit the Cubs pitching staff too. I think going into this year, everyone knew that all 5 of the Cubs starters were going to be good. I mean, this was one of the better rotations in baseball, and maybe Cubs fans were a little disappointed with the way they started. I think leaving this series, Cubs fans have to be very excited with the arms that they have. I mean, we didn't even see Lester in this series, and they basically blanked the Brewers all 4 games. So disappointed with the way the offense handled things this weekend, but like you said, the pitching staff, it was very impressive. We got some really good starts. I mean, outside of Suter's first inning where he got roughed up a bit, he settled down in that game. But Chase Anderson was great on Thursday night. Davies was good today outside of he left one over the plate a little bit to Russell that he drove to right field and, got on third to start that inning. But other than that, I was excited with the way the pitching staff handled this weekend, especially against an offense like the Cubs. So.
Yeah, and it's not like the Cubs offense, slaughtered your starting pitching either. I mean, there was just a few miscues. The Cubs capitalized, and they took advantage, and that's really how the game ended up because the weather played a huge advantage in this series as well. So, I mean, both ways, offenses weren't hot either. Like I said before, Kris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo had 2 hits. I mean, granted, Kris Bryant just came back, but that just goes to show how much starting pitching on both sides were dominant. Now, Mark, up until this week, like Mitch just said, the Cubs starting pitching was pretty bad. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Yu Darvish was pretty disappointing. Chatwood walking a lot of guys. Quintana not as sharp as we're used to. But the starting pitching for the Cubs has delivered 6 straight quality starts, and in 40 innings, they've given up just 4 runs. Now, when this staff is on, they look pretty good, and we got some signs and glimpses of what we can expect moving forward and what we kind of expected going into this season. And in their 13 quality starts this season, the staff has an ERA of 0.99. Now, this is, like I said, this is what we expected, but my question for you is how are you feeling about this staff now that it's kind of showing their ability, what we expected from them, and who impressed you? Maybe some guy or maybe 2 guys impressed you most during this week.
I mean, I'm feeling great. This is exactly this is what I knew would eventually happen with this staff. I didn't know exactly when it would. I think we talked about sometime in May that they would start putting it together. And, Lester might lay an egg tomorrow. Who knows what could happen? But the fact that the last 27 innings pitched by the starting staff, there hasn't been a run. There has been a total of 11 hits, and their strikeout to walk ratio is 24-6. That's insane. Those are insane numbers right there. And we'll take that any day, obviously. And in the 4 of those games, it was against the Brewers. And the Brewers, I still think they're my wild card team. I still think they're going to make the wild card. And I saw this little fact tweeted out there that the 2 runs given up in the 4-game series here against the Brewers is the fewest that the Cubs have given up dating back to 1969 in a 4-game series. So that was the best 4-game stretch that the Cubs pitchers that we've ever seen. So that's something to not really knock right there. That is something that is quite the fact right there. They all looked great to me. Chatwood, his walks have gone down. In his last 3 starts, we've been a little bit worried about his walks, how he's been looking. But he's gone from 7 walks to 5 walks to 3 walks today. So that is a trend that I like to see continue to decrease. Chatwood's last 2 starts, he went 6 innings and gave up 1 earned run against Cleveland. And then today he went 7 innings, 7 shutout innings right there. But I think Hendricks looked the best. I'm going to say that Hendricks looked the best because that first game, that opening game in the series, I think there was a lot of pressure there because it was 0-0 until Schwarber hit that bomb. So that game was so intense to me. And I mean, there were some fly balls that were right down on the warning track. The game ended with, I thought it was going to be a 2-run home run for Milwaukee. And it was just Hendricks in a big game. I trust him over anybody. So I think Hendricks looked the best out of everybody, but everyone looked great. So.
Yeah, everyone looked great, but like you just said, Hendricks has been that guy for the Cubs to go to. We saw that Game 6 of the NLCS, Game 7 of the World Series, the most important game in Cubs history. We've seen that. So Hendricks continues to impress people in big situations. Chatwood, for me, was really impressive because we've had this concern of, what comes with Chatwood is his lack of control in his walks, but how he can get out of those walks and how he can move along with runners on base and stuff like that is really encouraging, and how he settled in today was really good. Now, like you said, Game 1, I thought that Travis Shaw tied that up quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Mitch, did you think that ball was going out? Because, like I said, this is April and Wrigley, so we don't know. But off the bat, I was crapping my pants. I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah. It seemed to be in the same spot that he hit the one off of Wade Davis at Miller Park, where he kind of drove the ball to left center. But yeah. Off the bat, it jumped off well. I knew the wind was blowing in, but I believe it was Schwarber. I don't know who was playing left, but he was trailing back, and once he started getting into that warning track, he's just got a chance, and then he kind of just came up just short. So yeah, there was that moment there where my heart started beating, and you could feel it in your throat, but unfortunately, he didn't get into it enough. So.
Yeah, no, okay, let's get into the Milwaukee's bullpen. It's been phenomenal. I mean, some pretty great stuff there. I have 2 questions for you, Mitch. I guess I'll start with one. In your opinion, you pay way more attention to the Brewers than me, but the Cubs and Brewers, the whole series seemed kind of intense. I mean, there was 1-run games, 1-run leads. No, there was no shootout, like I said earlier. So why didn't the Cubs face Josh Hader at all? Because when it's a 1-run game, you're still in it no matter what. And Josh Hader, he's as nasty as it gets out of the pen. So what do you think the Brewers should have used him, or what were you thinking?
Yeah, so I was talking about this with one of my buddies actually earlier today, and I think the logic behind that was CC was just hoping that the game could get tied up, whether it was in the 7th or the 8th. It just seemed like the Cubs were always ahead, or they scored their run to kind of get their lead, whether it was in the 6th or the 7th, where I think CC was hoping that the Brewers could answer, get it tied, whether it was the 7th inning, 8th inning, and they could bridge that gap for 2 innings with Hader, and then hopefully, they were hoping they could get another run across the plate where they could then end up going to Barnes in the 9th or Albers in the 9th or something like that. I think CC was waiting for a situation like that where they could kind of bridge 2 innings together with the game tied, but it just didn't happen that way. So I think that's why we didn't see Hader this weekend.
But in all reality, you guys got a stud out of the pen right there. Josh Hader, I'm jealous as a Cubs fans looking in because I got him on my fantasy team. I mean, this guy is almost as like he's so good. I mean, I've seen the stuff he throws, and it's just, how does he do that? All the movement, and it's just ridiculous. And his ability to strike out people. Carl Edwards Jr. is doing a nice job of that this season, and so is Josh Hader. So the strikeouts are there, and the future is bright in that position. Now, also a follow-up question. Do you think that Josh Hader ever has a chance to become a starter?
So that's the thing. Everyone's been begging for that, I think, too, with like the whole like Brewers rotation and, what's going to happen there. But what you're seeing with Josh out of the pen, kind of that whole like Andrew Miller type effect where you have a guy that literally can come in for 2 innings, get multiple strikeouts. He can come in a situation where you have a guy on second and third and 1 out and you need a big strikeout or something along those lines, that he's dominated his current role so well that I think the pitching staff, the pitching coach Derek Johnson and Craig Counsell are afraid to kind of move that. If it's not broke, don't fix it. So I think we'll see Hader in the pen at least definitely the whole year this year. And then if they do move him to the rotation, it would be tough because of how good he is right now where he's at.
Yeah, he's really delivering big time for you guys. Now, who's Taylor Williams? Because this guy looks like an upcoming stud, and I saw him the first series, and he came in today's game on Sunday and pitched. I think he had 1 strikeout, no hits. So tell me a little bit about Taylor Williams for maybe people who are on the outside, not the most educated baseball fan, but Taylor Williams for me is a stud coming up in your pen as well.
Yeah, so we drafted him in 2013 in the early rounds. I think he was a 4th rounder in 2013 and was one of those top pitching prospects that kind of blew you away by his velocity and his pretty nasty slider. He got KB on a pitch today that I was like, woof. I was actually about to tweet something about how I think he has the second best stuff in our pen behind Hader, and that's saying a lot about a pen that's been arguably the best in baseball up to this point. But yeah, he was a big arm we drafted in 2013, got Tommy John in 2015, 2016 time frame. So they were kind of worried about that, but he's shown that everything he was before Tommy John, he can be that guy. So I'm glad he's finally getting a shot. He was battling this year in spring training for that final spot. They decided to start him in AAA due to Drake not having an option left. But I think once Boone Logan gets back, once Corey Knebel gets back, and they start to solidify that pen with their normal guys, I think Taylor Williams earned his spot.
Yeah, I mean, Knebel going down for you guys in a meaningless game, it just kind of sucks, and that's the heartbreak of baseball where, a guy like that goes down, and now you're really wondering, like, who can come in and fulfill that role, and now you got Hader who can do that as well, and you have options in the pens, which is always nice for any baseball team. Now, Mark, what's going on with Addison Russell? He's a guy who was an all-star 2 years ago, drove in 95 runs, and started this season pretty hot. Last year, disappointment year, but we all wanted to see a rebound. Now, since the start of the season, he's cooled off a little bit and hit 235 this year so far, but he had a few base hits today, had an RBI, sac fly, so that was very encouraging. But briefly, what are your expectations for Russell this season?
I was going to say, I mean, if we're just looking at today, I think he's doing great because he was involved with both runs today. He had that great opposite field triple today, and he scored a run, and he brought in 1 as well. So he was involved with both big plays today. It was kind of the Addison Russell game in a way. And I mean, I don't think that Addison Russell is going to become that superstar power level hitter that we all thought he could be when he was 20 years old. But we know that he's going to be right around 240, 250 batting average. That's where his career average is. That's where he'll probably be this year. He kind of goes in cold and hot streaks, but when he is on, like, it changes everything. When there's a hot Addison Russell at the plate, we saw it in the NLCS in 2016 when he had that grand slam. He's something else. Like
clutch. He's very clutch.
And something that I've noticed about him that I think is true is that anytime that a lot of the other hitters are really slumping, he's kind of the guy that brings us out of it. Because I remember last year he had that really important home run when it was the first game out of the break when the Cubs were up like 7-0, and then they gave up all the runs and it was like 7-7, and then Addison Russell had that go-ahead home run to take the lead in like the 8th inning or something like that. And he always seems to come in when we need him to. So I think that he is – I mean, we know how he is on defense, Gold Glove candidate, I think. And I think that on offense, he's not going to be as consistent as we need him to be, but 240, probably 15 to 20 home runs.
See, I was going to ask, is 265 a reach for him?
I think 265 is a reach, but I think it's capable. He could get there. I'd say more around 250 to 260, somewhere around
Yeah,
there.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think 250 is probably the best bet. He just needs to learn how to drive the ball a little bit more. Now, Mitch,
Exactly.
okay, so we're a month in baseball. The Brewers started off really hot. They cooled down. Then they got really hot again. And then now, you're on a 4-game losing streak after just winning 8 straight. And 8 straight, no matter who you're playing in baseball, you said it's good. No matter if they're, rebuilding teams or whatnot. But who has impressed you most on this Brewers team? Maybe, someone who you didn't think would and then did, or maybe someone coming in. But who impresses you most on this Brewers team, maybe moving forward as well?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the first guy you could look at would be Lorenzo Cain. He was kind of one of the big of acquisitions. I know Yelich has been slumping a bit here, but Cain continues to produce at the top of the lineup, and that's what you need, especially when you have guys like Braun and Shaw at the 3-4 spot. You need guys on for them so they can consistently drive in runners. So Cain's on base percentage, I still think, is north of 400, which is obviously really good. So Cain's really stuck out to me, but I don't have another specific person. I just want to touch on the bullpen again. They showed the stat again today, which we have currently 5 relievers in our bullpen at a 1.50 or lower ERA. I mean, that stat's just unheard of. And obviously you can't expect them to continue at that elite of a level, but just the bullpen as a whole. I mean, before Oliver Drake gave up those runs on Thursday night or Friday, it was, they had a 30-inning streak of not giving up an earned run. So just the bullpen as a whole has really stuck out. I knew going into the year they were going to be one of the best. I just didn't think they were going to be this good to start the year. So Lorenzo Cain and the bullpen would probably be my 2 big things for the year.
Okay, now opposite side of that, are you worried about Domingo Santana? Because he has 19 singles this season so far, and it seems like he's struggling kind of to find that power stroke. He just hit, I think, 25, 30 homers last year, and off the top of my head, I think that's what he hit. But what's your opinion on him? Are you worried about him, or do you think he'll find it? Or talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's interesting you bring that up because CC kind of threw a little jab today. Not a jab, but he basically called out right field as a spot where we just need more production from there. So I think he's looking to kind of create a spark out of a guy like Domingo. But yeah, like you said, his power numbers, at least for the first month, have just seemed to be non-existent. He's a guy that has historically had a high strikeout rate. It dropped earlier in the year, but I don't know if the fact that his strikeout rate has dropped a little bit, I think it was down like 6% from last year, if that's done something to his power numbers. So that'll be interesting to see going forward. With Thames being injured, I think you'll continue to see Braun play more at first, which will give Domingo consistent at-bats in right field, and that's really all you need. Just need to keep giving him consistent at-bats and hope he can show what he showed last year. So it's a bit worrying, yeah, but like you said, first month, it's been the first month. It's still April. He's got time to kind of figure things out and make adjustments.
Absolutely. You're looking for Domingo Santana to get it rolling. We're looking for Anthony Rizzo to get it rolling. He's a guy who's been very cold at the plate. Doesn't look like himself. I mean, he kind of looks like Jason Hayward, just rolling the ball to second base all the time in that shift. But okay, Mark, so the Cubs switch up their top of the order recently. Alberto Mora and Javier Baez, they're doing excellent things at the top of the order. I mean, they strung together an 11-game hit streak, both of them, that came to an end today, but they look like what the Cubs need up on top of their order in front of Bryant, Rizzo, Contreras. And they're doing it defensively as well. Baez is, he may have the most errors, which actually shocked me. I saw that today. He has the most errors, but he's a guy who will make the ridiculous plays look easy, but he'll make the easy plays look hard. But Baez and Almora are 2 defenders who are really good. And they're doing things offensively as well. But what are your take on those 2 right now? They're about as hot as you can get. Do you think they will continue that? I know they won't be as hot as they are right now, but do you think they'll be consistent enough for the Cubs to keep them right in the top of the order?
I think that those 2 at the top, I think that is the answer for now because they're both looking incredible right now. And Javi, for a while, he was back in the 7 spot or somewhere around there, and Almora was up front, but you need that kind of production at the plate off the bat because there were many times where Almora walks or something, and then Javi gets a double, and then look, there's already a run. Like when you get that kind of stuff going, and then there's already a run, there's no outs, and Chris Bryant's on base with Javi at second, that's a disaster for a starting pitcher. So I think that's the recipe for success right now. Obviously, you can change that anytime. Hap I don't know if he's ever going to be back in the leadoff role. I don't think he should, not for a while at least. And I think that Happ still deserves a good chance to play, but I think that when it comes to the first two, it should be Almora and Javi. And I'm actually wearing my El Mago shirt from Big Cat that he just brought out a couple weeks ago. So, yeah.
I know I like them at the top of the order. They kind of give that swagger, starting off the game. It does. Okay, well, yeah. So let's get into some rapid fire. Let's switch things up a little bit. Other than some serious talk. So, like we did this last time, I'll throw some questions at you guys. Just want a brief answer, and we'll go to the next question. So, Mark, I'm gonna start with you, man.
Okay.
All right, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Ready? All right. Question number 1: Who has a better year, Darvish or Quintana?
Quintana.
Does Schwarber hit 40 home runs this season?
Schwarber hits 80 home runs. No, he'll hit over 40. He'll hit over 40.
All right. If you had to pick between Baez or Contreras, who becomes an all-star first?
Oh, my gosh. That is really hard. I'm going to go Contreras.
Ooh, I thought you were going to go Baez there.
I'm going to go Contreras just because that means that Yachty probably doesn't make it.
All right. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
Do the Brewers make the postseason?
They do.
All right, Mitch. That's hard for a Cubs fan to admit, but I got to admit it too. I think the Brewers get in them with the wild card. I do. They're a young team on the verge. They're playing with some, they're playing. When you're winning in baseball, it's contagious, and the Brewers are showing that right now. All right, so Mitch, your time for rapid fire. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. Who's your favorite player between Yelich and Kane?
Yelich.
Who hits more homers for the Brewers, Braun or Shaw?
Shaw.
Do the Brewers make a trade in July for a starting pitcher?
I'm going to say no.
Who would you want them to trade for?
Ultimately Stroman, but Toronto's too good, so I'll say Archer.
All right. Favorite baseball player who is a non-Brewer?
Mark Stroman.
Okay, I like it. The dude is so nasty with the curve and everything else. Childhood favorite player growing up? Who did you idolize?
I'll say Derek Jeter.
All right. Overrated, by the way. Favorite baseball movie?
Sandlot.
All right.
Little Big League close second, though.
Little Big League. I don't know if I've seen that one.
Yeah, the kid manages the Twins. His grandpa is the owner. It's pretty good.
I like Moneyball and Hardball.
Okay, those are good.
G Baby's my dude. All right, so Mitch, before we wrap things up here, the Cubs dominated the Brewers so far this season, 7-1, 5 shutouts, I think. Moving forward into the summer and into September, when the whole month is basically playing NL Central teams, that stretch there is what's really going to define some teams on the verge of winning or losing. So what are some things the Brewers have to do better to beat the Cubs?
Yeah, so I mean, it obviously starts with the offense. We went 4 games this weekend with scoring only 2 runs. So we talked about the weather conditions and the wind and how the wind was blowing in for 4 games. So there wasn't going to be a lot of long balls. And I think when the Brewers don't hit home runs, they really struggle to consistently score runs. I think that was why you saw Stearns go out and get Kane and Yelich this year, was because they needed on-base guys that could get on base consistently so we could drive more runs in ways other than the home run. So
I saw a stat today, I think, watching the Brewers broadcast. The Brewers, if this is right, they're 12-4 this season when they hit a home run. So you're right about that. Like when they're slugging, they're winning. So okay, yeah, go on. I just wanted to add that in there.
Yeah, so when it comes down to September, obviously the team that's going to be standing in the way is Chicago. I think it's definitely fair to say, I know everyone gives a bunch of crap back and forth, but it's fair to say that the division definitely runs through Chicago. And if Milwaukee wants any say in winning the Central, they're going to have to beat Chicago, and they're going to have to play better than what they did this weekend. So, a lot of games in September will kind of come down to the way they did this weekend, where it's a 1-run game and you just can't make the mistakes that they made. The play Sogard that he made where he bobbled the ball up the middle, or Arcia booting the fly ball. You can't make those mistakes in games like this where every run is crucial. So, cleaning up the defensive end and just putting the ball in play more, and hopefully, driving the ball out of the park come September, and hopefully that's the key to success for the Brewers.
Well, what you just said is exactly right, because when the Brewers were on that 8-game winning streak, the defense was absolutely stellar. Then when they're on a 4-game losing streak now, the defense, not so great. So, I mean, when you clean up the defense, I mean, Joe Madden really established this last year because the 2016 Cubs team was so good at defense and pitching, everything combined. They won the World Series. They wanted to not repeat, but they wanted to depeat. the defense be the same. And that wasn't really the case last year, but they tightened up later in the year. But yeah, if the Brewers, I mean, this series, the Cubs and Brewers, the I-94 rivalry is headed in the right direction. I mean, I don't know if you would call it a rivalry right now because it defines what you call a rivalry. But when two teams are battling for the division, those games in September are going to get really intense. And like you said, they're going to be a one-run game. So you got to minimize the errors no matter what end you're at, because one error, one mistake can really define a game or a whole series. So, yeah, I mean, this isn't the end of these two ball clubs. I mean, we've seen them 8-9 times already thus far, and we're only a month into baseball. So July, August, June into September, it's going to be some great baseball, and I like where this rivalry is headed. But you know, it's good to be Brewer and Cubs fan right now because we're kind of the two teams in the division right now. So Mark, maybe a few things to keep winning versus the Brewers. For me, it's the Brewers hitters seem to extend the strike zone when they go 0-2. And that's a huge key, you know, try to get those young hitters to chase, you know, the Cubs pitching staff. What are your keys right now for maybe, you know, one or two things to keep winning versus the Brewers?
Well, for starters, the Cubs need to make sure that Jose Quintana is pitching in at least one of those games, because when he pitches against the Brewers, he turns into 2015 Jake Arrieta. He's virtually unhittable. It's unbelievable, and it doesn't really make much sense to me, but he clearly is just his best self against the Brewers. So that's nice to see. I think that it's going to be important to stop Ryan Braun. He is always the guy that he owns the most real estate in my head. Every time he's up at bat, I get stressed. And he didn't have a big series, and naturally we swept him. So there are just so many times where I feel like he can just change the game. And it's going to be the biggest thing is going to be minimizing their damage, minimizing their bats, and I think that the Cubs will be able to take care of things on their own end. I would have preferred to see more offense, I guess. I mean, I'm not going to complain about a sweep, but the bats kind of went cold, and they did capitalize when they needed to, and the pitching went through, and they did incredible, but we can't count on that to happen every time. So exactly. I think that for the next series, I'm hoping that the bats can turn up a little bit more and do better.
And I can't argue with that. So I'll wrap things up here. I mean, the Cubs sweep the Brewers at Wrigley Field and take one game advantage in the standings. Starting pitching seems to be headed in the right direction, and it's going to be a really fun year for both teams going down the stretch. I'm Kyle Malzhan alongside co-host Mark Talarico and Mitch Luedtke, man. Thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And a lot of fans who just got swept wouldn't do this, so big props to you, my man. Appreciate you. All right, so I'll wrap this thing up. Thanks for tuning in into the Cubs Live podcast. Go Cubs, and have a great day.